ask yourself one question. Do I feel lucky? Well, do you?
It's time to flip a coin and find out.
Well, we need to know what we're calling it for here.
We're calling it to see who's got the best sports knowledge here on the Coin Flip with Martin Kelly
and Jacob Zimmerman.
Flip it again. It's the middle of the week. That means we're ready to make some picks here in the Coin Flip podcast. Jacob Zimmerman, Martin Kelly. A crazy week 10. We're ready to dive right into it. Week 11 picks coming up here once again. Ready to break things down. Martin Kelly, a great victory for you on Monday Night Football, but a full Sunday slate. What stuck out to you from Week 10 in the National Football League?
I guess you got to go with the first game with the Vikings and the Saints. Who would have thought Dobbs would have clicked as well in Minnesota? I guess backups in Minnesota, they have a tendency to find some magic. Keenum with the famous season that got him all the way to the NFC Championship game. I guess it works with Dobbs too. The Colts game in the morning with the Patriots, that was a fun one to watch a little bit. The Steelers game was a fun one to watch. There was a good amount of games in the early morning and a decent amount of games in the afternoon. And, of course, the Monday night game was a fun one. So it was above average week, I'm going to be honest. It just wasn't like the most stellar week. But nonetheless, there was good football.
Martin, there's an argument to be made, though, that it was a stellar week if you like game winners. I believe there was 5, maybe even 6 games that came down to the final seconds where a game-winning field goal was kicked. I mean, look at some of these scores here. Browns, 33-31. Texans, 30-27. Seahawks, a 3-point game. The Broncos, a 2-point game. Cardinals, a 2-point. I mean, this was a crazy week. If you're a diehard fan of some of these, teams in the kind of in the middle of the pack, there was some teams that really suffered some crushing losses in Week 10. And, Martin, we got to talk about the Buffalo Bills here real quick. You picked last Wednesday the Broncos to win flat out as a 7.5-point underdog against the Bills. Back in, I believe let's find it, Martin. It was week
7.
7. Yes, you picked the Vikings. This was when the San Francisco 49ers were at the heat of their powers mid-season. And you picked them to upset San Fran, and they did so. So, Martin, 2 times in 4 weeks now you've had the pick of the week. How do you feel about
it? I feel lucky enough. Obviously, I got serious luck with the pass interference against Judy and the re-kick. So, 2 opportunities to lose that game, 2 opportunities to win that game. Kind of the same way as the Vikings won over the Niners a couple weeks back. To be totally honest, I don't know. The Bills just seem like that team that you could just surprise. Obviously, they got almost surprised by the Giants. They got surprised by the Patriots, so they were vulnerable at times for a loss. And honestly, it just was the luck of the draw, honestly. And they covered as well. So getting the upset pick and the cover, I mean, you can't get any better than that. So I wish I was in Vegas and would have bet some money because I would have walked out as a winner.
Well, of course they covered. They won. And Martin, that did resurge my memory. I did pick the Patriots to beat the Bills as a similar underdog a couple weeks back. So the Bills, we've been picking on the Bills. We've been picking against them here in the Coin Flip podcast. And Martin, I'm looking at our overall records right now. You are a nice even 80-70. You're 10 games above 500. And I am 93-57. Martin, if you add those up, we have predicted 150 games across the National Football League. Every single matchup, every single week, through 10 weeks. And Martin, you got another dub against me. I think this is your 3rd overall in the season. We've had some ties. I've had my fair share of victories. I go 7-7. You go 8-6. We did both hit some underdog picks, but we did miss flatly on some predictions as well. Martin, the Lions took care of the Chargers, although that wasn't really much of an upset in our eyes. We just thought the Chargers would have a little bit more to play for. And of course,
And
going
they always
back,
did.
circling around, we can't forget about the Thursday night game with the Panthers and the Bears.
Yeah.
Your team versus my team. Martin, as for what actually happened in this game, there's not a whole lot to talk about. Bryce Young didn't reach 200 yards. The Bears defense proved to be a little bit better on the day, and it was another disappointing game in the bright lights. But Martin, what were your thoughts on the rest of the week, as well as the Bears getting the win over the Panthers? You getting bragging rights?
The Bears getting over the Panthers just means the number one overall pick is still in my hands, so I'm excited about that. Can't wait for Marvin Harrison Jr. to be a Chicago Bear very, very, very soon. Also, you bring up the Browns game. That was an exciting comeback. The Ravens kind of shot themselves in the foot too many times in that game. The Bengals and the Texans game, we missed out on that one. Who would have thought CJ Stroud would step up to be this good this early? 15 touchdowns, only 2 interceptions for the kid. Joe Burrow with almost the, Joe icy moment, but it went through Boyd's hands. There was a good amount of games. The only real snoozer was obviously the Cowboys versus the Giants, but we saw that coming. But yeah, overall, it was a good week.
Martin, one more snoozer before we move on to our Week 11 picks. New England, Martin, we might as well call them Old England at this point because they're a thing of the past. They're 2-8. Mac Jones, his confidence is shot. He's like a sixth grade guy who just got rejected by the girl in his class that he likes. Martin, bad news, everything up there in the Northeast. But without further ado, let's waste no time. You've heard all about Week 10. Let's start teasing Week 11 here on the podcast. Martin, we're starting the timer. I want you to kick things off. Bengals at Ravens. Baltimore's a 3.5-point favorite. Both teams trying to bounce back after losses in Week 10.
Yeah, this is where it starts off being tough right off the bat between the Bengals and the Ravens. They're at Baltimore. The Bengals are going on the road. They just lost at home. They haven't been too terrible on the road this year. I'm going. This is a serious toss up. I'll go Baltimore. Give me the Ravens. I don't know. I just think Baltimore can escape with a win. With Cincinnati, they're up and down still. The offense is there, but there is no defense in Cincinnati. Let's see if Baltimore can take advantage.
It's a tough game to pick, Martin. I can understand your kind of back and forth confusion on this game. It feels like the late season. We're here in the late season, Martin. This is kind of the latter portion of the season where this almost reminds me of the witching hour if you watch Red Zone. It's like middle of the third quarter, teams have victories locked up. In this case, teams think they have regular seasons locked up. And then things just change with the tide. Some teams think they're not going to make the playoffs. All of a sudden they do. Feels like the Bengals close strong in the regular season and Baltimore does the opposite. They kind of fold late in the season. But the Ravens have had Joe Burrow's number, and they were at home in this game. I feel like the Bengals could still find a way to make the playoffs even if they lose. I think I'll ride with the Ravens as well. But Martin, let me just say, I'm so glad I'll have a legit reason to actually tune into some meaningful football here on Thursday night. I mean, the Bears and the Panthers, those are our teams going at it. But Martin, after a couple minutes of watching the game, it just occurred to me in my head, there's NBA basketball on. Neither of these teams are making the playoffs anyway. I mean, thank goodness we have a big prime time matchup. Too bad it's on Amazon Prime, but I'm going to roll with the Ravens as well. Martin, Steelers and Browns, another showdown in the AFC North.
Yeah, another showdown in the AFC North. Getting word today that DTR will start for Cleveland. Obviously, Deshaun Watson is done for the season with the season-ending shoulder missing piece situation. However that goes. Pittsburgh, getting the win over the Packers, but that was an ugly win again by slow Matt Canada offense. Even with a rookie quarterback, I'm going Cleveland just because that defense for Cleveland is so much better. They'll keep a lockdown on the Steelers' offense, and as long as DTR doesn't turn the ball over, I can see Cleveland winning that game.
Martin, I'm looking at the point spread right here. Cleveland -1. This is a huge double indictment. I'm going to pull out the double indictment for this one, Martin, because not only is this an indictment on Kenny Pickett and the Pittsburgh Steelers for being an underdog in this game, going up against DTR at quarterback. I mean, a guy who can barely squeeze out a single point in fantasy football. Or is it a bigger indictment on how Deshaun Watson has played this season for the Cleveland Browns? I mean, he's had a game or two where he's popped. I know the timing for this statement was maybe more a couple weeks back. But Martin, for you to have a season-ending injury, not only does it take you out of that game, it lets everybody in the locker room know that your chances of having that quarterback live up to the expectations that you paid $200 million for, among amid all the allegations, your locker room knows now that you have a second string at best, probably a third string quarterback at the helm for the rest of the season. That's not good for the confidence in the locker room for the Cleveland Browns. I'm going to take the Pittsburgh Steelers here in quite an embarrassing point spread situation. Cardinals and Texans. Martin, does Kyler Murray make it 2 in a row? Or does CJ Stroud make himself not only a Rookie of the Year campaign, but does he edge himself closer to MVP respect?
Well, MVP respect. Everyone's been talking about it all week in the news about MVP. MVP he beat Joe Burrow. He beat Joe Burrow. 15 touchdowns. And in all respect, that's amazing. But let's pump the brakes just a little bit. Patrick Mahomes is still ahead of him in the MVP race. That's not even a question. And Lamar Jackson is ahead of him in the MVP race at the moment. And so is Jalen Hurts at the moment as well. So those guys are ahead of CJ at the moment. Um, Texans, Cardinals. Cardinals had to fight a tough game, but the offense looked 100 times better with Kyler Murray in it, and it looked like a better offense for Kyler to run. Houston obviously can pull out big wins and big moments in games. Their running game is sustainable. Their defense is fun to watch. Another close game. You can pick them, and this basically it is. Give me the underdogs again. I'll rock with it. Give me the Houston Texans. Let's see if they can do it again. If they beat Kyler Murray and CJ Stroud has another 3-4 touchdown, 500-yard type game, then I can't say he's not in the MVP conversation after that.
Well, Martin, you fooled me because you said the underdog, but the Texans are a 5-point favorite against the Cardinals here. I'm going to roll with the Texans as well. Martin, when you said pump the brakes, I'm thinking, no, it's go-kart time. I'm hammering the heel down to the metal, and we're flying forward on this CJ Stroud MVP debate because he's easily Rookie of the Year. He's got out in front of Puka Nacua by a far margin. It would take an injury this week for keep him out the rest of the year for him to not win that. The MVP though is a different conversation. I checked the odds. He's like 6th or 7th in the running for MVP. And Martin, I think that has to just do with how they think he'll close the season and the actual narrative around him just being a rookie and him not maybe getting the veteran respect for it yet. Martin, if the season ended today, I think CJ Stroud would have a really, really good shot of winning MVP because not only does he lead the league in passing, he's the best touchdown to interception ratio, 15-2, and he's doing it for the Houston Texans. Martin, the Houston Texans are going to go to 6-4. Everybody's going to have to say, whoa, we might get our first rookie MVP since Jim Brown in the 50s or whenever that was. Martin, I'm going to roll with the Texans as well. Wasting more time. Let's go over to the Titans and the Jags. How about them? Jacksonville, favored by 7.
I'm going to take Jacksonville in this one. The Titans have a fun defense. We saw their offense get exposed, but they went up against a good defense in Tampa, and Baker Mayfield, all he had to do was not turn the ball over, and he accomplished that. So, give me the Titans. Sorry, who are they playing? I forgot. Jags. I apologize. Give me the Jags. This will be a win for them. There'll be a bounce back win for them after getting embarrassed by the Niners.
Jags, not once. We're going with the Jags twice. 2 for 2 here. I think you're going to sweep this game, Martin. The Titans have not been able to run the ball with Derrick Henry. It's not been the same Derrick. I don't know if it's the offensive line. I don't know if it's Father Time, meaning Mr. Henry himself. A guy like Travis Etienne has just simply, outplayed a guy like Derrick Henry this year. And in years past, the Titans had the advantage with the coaching with Vrabel. I'm not saying they've lost that. They had the advantage with the defense. They've had the advantage on the ground with Derrick Henry. And when the head of the monster is not quite what it once was, your team starts to go. It's been very apparent with the Titans. Yeah, everybody wants to say the Titans, aside from the last couple of weeks with Will Levis, they haven't had good quarterback play, but they really haven't had stellar quarterback play for the last 3 years. And when you're failing to put up 4 touchdowns in a game, when you can only do that once over the last 5 weeks, then things are not rolling well with the Titans. I picked them a lot this year in a lot of tough 50-50 games. This is not a 50-50 coin flip game. No pun intended. We are both rolling with the Jags here on this one. Raiders, the monster underdog against the Dolphins. Is that deservedly so, Martin?
Yes, it is deservedly so. The Dolphins are a fun team, except when they go up against a superior team than them. But that's just for another conversation for another day. They're going up against the Raiders, a good, tough team. I don't care anybody. I don't care what anybody wants to say about Antonio Pierce. Realistically, he's a good interim head coach for this team. He's given them a lot of fire and heads up. I don't think they'll have enough offensively to challenge this. I 100% believe the Dolphins will win this game. But if I was betting on another number, I would actually bet on the Raiders to cover. Everyone thinks their defense can't keep up, but their defense could keep up with Miami's offense. It's just their offense couldn't probably keep up with scoring. So, but overall, I'm picking the Dolphins.
Martin, you couldn't be more right. You couldn't be more right. Especially with that statement you made on the point spread. 13.5. My mouth is just drooling all over that one, Martin. I mean, the Raiders feel like they will easily cover this. I know they're in Miami. Las Vegas is a pretty warm place, too. It's not like they're going to a cold weather area late season here in the heat of the playoff push battle. It's not like you're going up to New England, you're going up to Buffalo. It's nothing like that. But Miami has been a formidable opponent against teams below 500, while the Raiders kind of have that feel. They are, by the grace of God, kind of Pittsburgh Steelers style, finding a way to win these games. They're 500, Martin. I never would have seen that coming. We were talking about the Raiders being in the running for Caleb Williams, Drake May 2 weeks ago, and all of a sudden, boom, boom, they win 2 games. Now, look into the context. They beat Tommy DeVito. They beat Zach Wilson. Yeah, that's not really moving the needle for me, but this is a very interesting game, Martin, because it kind of shows that can this be a game where personality, where the intangibles become tangible? And what I mean by that is, can this sort of new personality that the Raiders are now under with Coach AP, Antonio Pierce, can that be enough to kind of out-physical, to use enough physicality against a team that's all flashy like the Dolphins. It's an interesting story. I think we're both taking the Raiders to cover, but we're not making a fool out of ourselves yet. We're taking the Dolphins both to win. How about the Cowboys and the Panthers, though, Martin?
Cowboys and the Panthers. This actually feels like you described it last week when we both had to pick the Giants and the Cowboys, and you brought up, well, the last time they were that big of a favorite for the Cowboys, they lost to the Cardinals. This to me feels like that type of game. The last time the Cowboys and the Panthers met up, it kind of was that type of game. If you remember, Jacob, it was that game in Dallas. The Cowboys went up by like 20 some points, and Carolina made a late comeback. It was just short of, like, I think it was 7 or 8 points of that game before the Cowboys, I think, got an interception and ended. My point is, this feels like a Cowboys trap game on the road. Cowboys will still win, but I would not be surprised if the Panthers pulled off an upset. I'm still taking the Cowboys.
Martin, this does not feel like one of those games for me. I'll explain a little bit more about why, but Martin, when you kind of dig into the memory bank of Cowboys-Panthers games, my mind instantly goes back to that glorious 2015 season, that Thanksgiving Day game in the neon color rush blue jerseys, where Luke Kuechly and Cam Newton stomped the Cowboys in front of America. That was a great all-time classic favorite game of mine. We're going to be seeing quite the opposite when it comes to Sunday in November in 2023. Martin, this is going to be a very similar game to last week. Bryce Young is not Tommy DeVito, but the fact that I don't think, in this very moment, not his skills, not his actual talent level, but based off of what is around him with the O-line, the receivers, the play calling, the defense that's not what it was to kind of, give him more chances on offense. Bryce Young's production is not a whole lot better than Tommy DeVito right now, unfortunately. And I know it kind of seems like I'm bagging on the Panthers, picking against them, boasting about how C.J. Stroud's done. Especially that one really hurts, Martin. It does. But I'm going to pick the Cowboys as well. I think this is a Micah Parsons game. This is a game where he's going to have 2 sacks, a forced fumble, maybe a couple deflections at the line. Panthers won't score more than 17 points, and the Cowboys will probably find a way to cover the spread as well. I'm rolling with the boys to a game that may or may not be as close, the Bears and the Lions.
So we already know, you and I already know where I'm going with this one. Justin Fields is back. The Lions offensively are fun to watch. Defensively can be up and down. Aiden Hutchinson is scary. They do have some good linebackers, but their DBs are a little banged up. And I could be wrong about that too. But overall, I'm still taking the Bears. They need some real spark of this offense to unleash it. There's so many potential things this offense could do. Now, I just feel like Justin Fields will get it done. They'll win on the road. They cannot suffer another season getting swept by Detroit. I can't believe that in my lifetime, but I've been proven wrong before. Still give me the Bears.
Justin Fields or not, Martin, this is not one that's going to require a whole lot of thinking in the noggin for me. I'm rolling with the Lions on this one. 9-point favorite. I'll probably take that one as well, even in a division game. Jared Goff is playing pretty well. How about Montgomery? Martin, wasn't Montgomery on the Chicago Bears?
Yes, he was.
That's gotta feel rough. I feel your
Not
pain
really.
on that one. Watching him torch it up this year. I mean, 7 touchdowns. He's been a money making machine in fantasy for those owners who have had him. Amon-Ra St. Brown. He's a legit top 12 receiver. You can't really bet against that. And until you put DJ Moore in a situation to succeed, I'm not going to pick the Bears here. I think their defense, is solid. It's kind of held some teams lower than expected here and there. But all in all, it's the Lions. It's Jared Goff. They haven't made the brutal mistakes. Dan Campbell's probably going to have a couple flashy, fourth down, let's go for it, from our own 20, 4th and 10, first drive of the game. You never know what you're going to see out of Dan Campbell. So I'm going to roll with the Lions here. Chargers and Packers. I have a feeling, Martin, where you might go with this one.
Well, I have been burnt on the Chargers in the last couple weeks, so I am going with Southern Canada in this game. I just feel like the Chargers are more of a mess than I think we're all thinking. I don't know what internally is wrong with the Chargers, but they have a whole lot of talent on defense, especially up on the defensive line, and they have talent on offense to completely obliterate teams on the field, but yet they keep losing games that they should win. They should have won against the Dolphins. They should have won against I think it was against the Lions, and I forget there was another game they lost earlier in the season. But my point is they've lost some games they should have won this year. Give me Southern Canada. Give me the Packers. I feel like Jordan Love will find a way to mistakenly get himself a win, and this will be a week.
Although we all have trust issues when it comes to picking the Los Angeles Chargers and Brandon Staley, Martin, I can't see the Chargers dipping down yet another game under 500. I'll provide some insight for some of these picks here on the podcast, week in, week out. And then I have some picks where I just look at the record and I just have a feeling and I say, that's not going to happen. The Chargers are not going to go to 4-6. If that happens, that may be the toe that breaks the camel. I don't know what the saying is, Barton. I don't know what the Campbell saying is. I forget. But point is, all it takes is one more feather to fall on the Chargers, and everything's going to fall apart. But Green Bay is not a good enough team. Jordan Love has thrown too many picks, Martin. 10 picks in 10 weeks of football is not very good. That's kind of Josh Allen status without the rushing success, without the touchdowns, without the yards as well. Give me the Chargers here, Martin. On to the Giants and the Commanders. Washington, favored by over a touchdown.
Yeah, they are favored over by a touchdown. If we remember correctly, this was a matchup a couple weeks ago. I think it was in the same week 7 with the Minnesota week. The point is, it was a Giants win, but that was with an actual legitimate starting quarterback. It wasn't Daniel Jones. It was Tyrod Taylor. He did enough to get 2 touchdowns to get him the win. This time, that won't be enough. There's not enough chicken at home. There's not enough of comfort at home for Danny DeVito to not get killed in this game. As weak as the Commanders' defense is, and as much as the Giants' defense is better, the Commanders' offense would do enough to win this game. I don't see the Giants even getting close in this game. Give me the Commanders.
Yeah, give me the Commanders as well. I mean, Sam Howell's probably going to have his first good game in a couple weeks. I think there's, just way too many negatives going on with the New York Giants. I mean, let's start with the injury report. If Darren Waller's an IR, if you're missing your starting quarterback for the rest of the year in Daniel Jones, if Danny, Tommy, whichever DeVito brother rolls out, it doesn't matter. The Commanders are going to handle business. Robinson and McLaurin probably go for good days. If I'm Saquon, you're questionable. This might be one of those games where you just might be a wise decision just to sit out. Even if it costs you a little bit of money, just sit out. Just hold it back on this one because Washington's going to win. They're going to find a way to keep themselves somewhat relevant in this weaker conference, the NFC wildcard race. That 7th spot really opens up for a team like the Commanders to still really try here late in the season. Giants, they want to win this one. They have no chance. Brian DeBall's job is probably still safe, though, regardless. But we are both agreeing with the commies here. Martin, on to the Buccaneers and the Niners coming off a big win last week.
If this was the old Bucks a couple years ago, and we had the Niners as good as they are now, what a matchup this would have been for like a Sunday night or a Monday night football game of like possibly Tom Brady getting some serious revenge on the team that did not want to draft him at all, his hometown team. We're not getting that matchup. We get Baker Mayfield against Brock Purdy. We're not getting the legendary matchup we dreamed of. As much as the Tampa Bay Bucks are probably the best team in the NFC South, but can't find a way to win the big games or be in a serious position to contend and win the division. The Bucks are probably that best team out of that division. Nonetheless, the Niners are better. They mop the floor with Jacksonville. They're gonna completely mop the entire sea with the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. It's not even gonna be close, but what could be if the Buccaneers just had a better quarterback. Nonetheless, give me the Niners.
Martin, they're going to mop the whole entire restaurant. I think the Buccaneers have the best offense in the NFC South, but their defense might just be the worst. And when Brock Purdy... I'll say this. I'm watching football last week. Brock Purdy has the pocket collapse. He can barely... There's no way he even has clear 100% vision on George Kittle down the field. There's too many guys who are a lot taller than him, too many helmets, too many gloves in the face. He double clutches as the pocket is literally, falling on him. And he finds a way to, chuck it 50 yards in the air, a perfect dime to George Kittle on the sideline. Brock Purdy has the ability to make some amazing game-changing throws. We're going to see him and Baker Mayfield kind of duel it out until ultimately the Niners defense, shuts him down, probably adds an interception to his season total of 5 so far. Christian McCaffrey had his anytime touchdown streak, I believe, of 17 games finally come to an end last week. Martin, I think it starts back up again. We're both rolling with San Fran. The Jets and the Bills, AFC East showdown. Buffalo -7.
So, rematch of week one. And if we remember after week one, both you and I were stunned by the fact that the Jets won and we both lost on that pick with the Bills because we for sure thought there's no way that, Josh Allen was going to not win that game versus Aaron Rodgers. It was going to be fun, but it was going to be a gunslinging game. And then Zach Wilson comes in, and then we know for sure the Bills were going to win, and that didn't happen. So I'm going to take the Jets. I'm going to take the underdog on this one. I'm going to roll with a big underdog pick on this one because I think the Bills internally are done, and I think Stephon Diggs versus Josh Allen has gotten worse in the locker room. Ken Dorsey is out. They look worse without Brian Daboll at offensive coordinator. I think the Bills are done internally, and I think it's going to get worse, and I think it's going to start with this week. Give me the Jets as the underdog pick.
Martin, as fun as it is to pick against the Bills, me and you have both had our fair share of doing that throughout the season. I don't think I'm going to do it in this matchup. The Buffalo Bills are not a poor team. They just find a way to let you down. And I think this is going to be one of those games that they win to, get themselves, kind of crept up a little bit in the standings. They're just kind of outside. It's like March Madness, Martin. When you're watching as a kid, March Madness, you got the first four in that bubble, you got the first four out that bubble. Right now, the Bills are in the first four out category, but there's still some time, left in the conference tournaments or whatever. Enough of the college basketball reference. You get my point. The Bills have a chance. This is the kind of game that they win. They're not gonna lose. They're not gonna get swept by the Jets in 2023 in their divisional series. Zach Wilson's not gonna put up over 20. I'll say this about the Bills: their defense isn't as bad as it should be given the guys that they've lost. They've given up 24 the last week, and while they've struggled to put up 24, 24 is going to be enough to beat the Jets. It just will be. So I'm going to take Buffalo in a game that they'll handle. They'll fight back a little bit. Even if Stephon Diggs is checked out, there are other guys in that locker room who have not. I'm going to take Buffalo. I think Zach Wilson will find a way to, keep the Jets out of it. They'll get a whole lot of chances in this game, but they're going to find a way to blow it once again. Give me the Bills this week, and then probably they'll lose the next week. Rams at home at -1 against Seattle.
So what I'm trying to figure out for this game is Matt Stafford going to come back? And that is the question I am trying to figure out. Is Matt Stafford is expected to start this week for the Rams? So give me the Rams for the upset win here. This is another upset pick I'm going to pick, only because we saw this go down earlier in the season at Seattle. The Rams got that win because we all have the famous, scared scene moment that Aaron Donald running towards Geno Smith, and Geno Smith just completely freaked out in the pocket, and I don't blame him for that at all. Aaron Donald would scare a whole lot of grown men that are bigger than him and stronger than him. This feels like a Rams win. They find a way to win games at home. They found a way to win against the Steelers. They found a way to win against the Cardinals. I think they'll find a way to win against the Seahawks. Give me the Rams.
You know what? Give me the Rams as well, Martin. I think Seattle is definitely the better team. The better team doesn't always win. I feel like the Seahawks are a team that is good enough to make the playoffs. Kind of with this roster, this coaching staff, they're good enough to make the playoffs year in, year out, but they're not good enough to, win multiple playoff games. Maybe not even a playoff game. Now, this is not a playoff game, obviously, but Matthew Stafford is coming back. It's been a couple weeks since we've seen, Puka Nacua and Cooper Kupp have signature games. I think it's only a matter of time before they have a bounce-back game. Martin, Baltimore whooped up on Seattle not too long ago, and I think it kind of exposed that they're not pretenders, but they're certainly not contenders. And when you would have hoped that they would have had a big bounce-back game last week against the Commanders, they really didn't. You only won by 3 against the Commanders, who have had some suspect performances this year. They're 6-3. They have enough of a cushion, to where their pressure is really not on them at this point of the season. The Rams absolutely have to be feeling the pressure with all the money that they have invested into this team. Give me the Rams as well. Heading to Sunday night, Vikings, Broncos. Martin, are you going to roll with the Broncos? Are you going to roll with Denver? Twice in a row.
Well, okay, so we've had 2 type of experiences with the Vikings. They've won at home and they've won on the road. They had to win kind of ugly versus the Falcons, but that was against the Falcons, a defense that gave up a whole lot of points the week prior to the Tennessee Titans in Will Levis's first start. This is against the Broncos, who have held teams to a minimal amount of points. They did hold the Packers under 20. They did hold the Jets under 25. They did hold the Chiefs under a good amount of points. So they've held fast and high flying offenses. Russell Wilson has done enough not to get himself into trouble. This feels like a game that the Vikings can steal on the road. I am going to rock with that, and I'm going to say Minnesota for this win. I just feel like this Josh Dobbs gives them a leverage that they haven't had at offense for a while, which is someone who can scramble and make plays. I don't feel like Russell Wilson will have the best of days versus that defense. Now that I'm thinking about it, scratch that. I'm sorry. I'll switch it. Give me Denver. I'll switch it. Denver. I talked my way into it. Give me Denver. That defense. I forgot about Minnesota's defense. Not good enough. Give me Denver. I'll switch it.
Martin, I won't be as bipolar with this pick. I'm going to roll with the Minnesota Vikings here. Josh Dobbs, the Pastronaut, the Dobb father. He's been everything you've wanted him to be. Just take a second, though, to kind of realize what this matchup would have looked like in week 4. And then think about what it is now. Both teams have come quite a long way. The Vikings, maybe not really, because they lost Kirk Cousins, but the Denver Broncos sure as hell have, especially that defense. Now, this is a kind of game where if you were a guru of the sport, if you are an NFL nerd, this is like the perfect game for an NFL nerd, Martin, because you have very compelling teams here. You have Josh Dobbs, maybe the best story in all of football right now, with a team that can still contend, or not contend, make the playoffs. You have a team with, the Denver Broncos, who were the talk of the town in the offseason, and lo and behold, all of a sudden, their defense is looking good. Russell Wilson's only thrown 4 picks all year. Sean Payton, he's starting to, look around the building and say, yeah, this is, I own this building. This is mine. This is my house. We're getting some respect around here. And, they could actually somehow make the playoffs. They could squeeze back. But I don't think they will, because Josh Dobbs is on a mission, and it's to the moon, Martin. It's to the moon. I'm going to roll with Josh Dobbs and the Minnesota Vikings. How about the best game of the NFL, perhaps on paper so far? The Super Bowl rematch. Eagles, Chiefs, Monday night, Martin.
Yeah, the Super Bowl rematch. Obviously, everyone keeps talking about that Super Bowl and um, how the Eagles got robbed. I have a different perspective of that. That might be an actually interesting video to put out for for our page. Anyway, give me the Eagles in this one. I'm not picking the Chiefs. There's no one on the Eagles defense that can stop AJ Brown. He's gonna go for 150 yards again. No one can stop the tush push. I just feel like the Chiefs don't have a whole lot of help on offense besides Kelsey. That's pretty much it for them. They don't have anyone else after that. They didn't really do anything at the trade deadline to fix that. Give me the Chiefs on the road. Excuse me. Give me the Eagles on the road. Sorry, my bad.
Martin, I will not blame you for picking Philadelphia here. But this is the kind of game that the Chiefs get up for. The Chiefs have kind of reached a status that I feel like is almost, similar to a dominant dynasty in the NBA, where on any given night they can go out there and win games by 30. But they don't necessarily need to do that every night. They don't need to expend that energy, especially when they know it's almost guaranteed that they're going to have, a home couple playoff games / series. But this is the kind of game where the Chiefs test themselves. We've heard, you've said everything that's been kind of correct about the Chiefs all year long. Except, Martin, that defense does have what it takes to stop A.J. Brown. You want to know why? Because last week, I know it was, across the sea, but Martin, Tyreek Hill, wouldn't you think Tyreek Hill has, knows every little thing, every tendency about those DBs in Kansas City that he's gone up against in practice for years? Martin, Tyreek Hill only had 62 yards receiving in a season where he was on pace for 2K. A.J. Brown, in the same class as Tyreek Hill, They're kind of 1-2, and then it's a drop off, and it's everybody else at this point in time with Justin Jefferson out. A.J. Brown can get locked up too. I'm just saying, Travis Kelce's enough. They have a rotation of receivers. It's kind of like in New England back in the day, Martin. It's kind of like, some of those New England teams where you have Julian Edelman, but the rest of them it's just an even rotation of guys. It's kind of what the Chiefs have. And if you have a coordinator, you have a quarterback, you have an O-line, and when you have a defense now, it's enough. I'm rolling with Kansas City in maybe one of the games of the year. Jalen Hurts, how he plays, that's going to be really crucial if you want to see how well he might do. It's going to be a great playoff preview for him and a tush push. But Martin, I am fading the Eagles, I'm fading you, and I am rolling with the Kansas City Chiefs. Falcons, Saints, Colts, Patriots, all on byes in Week 11. Now, most of these teams are kind of irrelevant in the grand scheme, but Martin, do you want to talk about any of these teams before we get on out of here?
Just collectively, all of them deserve a week off. Really, they all need a week off not only from football, from the press. Arthur Smith has too many questions to answer in Atlanta. No one knows what's going on with the Patriots. It's a total mess there. The Colts are just surviving because they lost their quarterback. It's a rough stretch for these 4 teams, but they'll be all right down the road. But nonetheless, that's my thoughts.
Yeah, not too much to talk about these teams. I'll say this, though. Falcons and Saints should do everything they can to kind of go all in, because they're both kind of exactly where we thought they were going to be. Nearly drowning under 500, maybe under 500 at the moment. But still perfectly in position to win a terrible, terrible NFC South. The Colts need to do everything they can to keep Jonathan Taylor healthy. And in the season that they have right now, where you kind of know there's a ceiling on the team, this is definitely the season to keep basically having Jonathan Taylor as your backup to Moss. So just keep him healthy and kind of win games here or there, but maybe you want to turn towards the draft at this point of the year. The Patriots need to go 100% into the draft, and they might not even need to change a damn thing, Martin. Start Bailey Zappi if you want to, but he's not going to be much better than Mac Jones, if better at all. So, Falcons, Saints, Colts, Pats get the week off on Week 11. Our predictions all on screen. Martin, best of luck to you in Week 11.
Best of luck to you as well.
That's the Coin Flip Podcast. If you've made it to this point in the video, if you're still here, drop a comment to give your take on who has the better predictions this week. Who will win the Week 11 week winner? Will it be Jacob? Will it be Martin? Find out next week on the Coin Flip Podcast. I'm Jacob. That's Martin. See ya.
Peace.